Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. The 2014 class of foster youth interns have worked very hard to prepare their presentations and the report for you today. And we are very proud of them and very excited for the information they're going to share with you. But before we turn the program over to them, we have a few special guests who have also prepared some remarks for you. So I'd like to introduce Senator Grassley from Iowa. He is a longtime member of the Congressional Coalition on Adoption, as well as a leader in the Senate on the Foster Care Caucus. So thank you, Senator, for being with us.
I'm glad to be here with Chairman Camp of the House Ways and Means Committee, and I'll soon be joined by my friend and co-chairman of our caucus, Senator Landrieu. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you all for your interest and for participating. It's good for all of us to be with you, but more good comes from hearing from the people that are participating today. We often hear about how Washington is broken. We hear that very little gets done. Rarely do reporters cover stories that bring both sides together. But today's event is proof that solutions are being discussed and that we can all sit down in the same room and share ideas about achieving better outcomes for our young people. And there's no better advocate for reforming the foster care system than the young people that you see here. Each of these interns comes from a background that has challenged them. They have made better lives for themselves despite the odds. They're truly experts that Congress ought to listen to, and we have that opportunity. I'm very glad to be here, not just because I have an interest in foster care and adoption issues, but because I personally have gotten to know one of the presenters here today. This summer, I had the privilege of getting to know Amani Myers. Through her, I learned about the struggles that young people face. Amani was born into the foster care system. She was separated from her siblings. She moved from foster home to foster home. She was with the same family for 3 years until she was 18. Then she got a call and was told that she had to leave that home. Her belongings were left on the porch. She had officially aged out of the system without a permanent home and very little support. I think every one of us would agree that no young person deserves to enter adulthood that way. Like Amani, each of these interns has a similar story overcoming difficult challenges. And today, we have a responsibility to learn from them. We all share a desire to improve the foster care system. We want to reunite young people with their families and increase adoptions when that doesn't happen. No child deserves a life without a family. No child is unadoptable. We want better outcomes. We have a lot to learn from these experts. It's my hope that we can put their policy recommendations into practice. Thanks again for having me. I'm glad to be here, and I'm going to be able to stay a while to hear a few of them testify. Thank you.
And I understand we've just been joined by the senator's co-chair in the Senate on the Foster Care Caucus, and also a longtime co-chair of the Congressional Coalition on Adoption. So Senator Mary Landrieu, thank you for joining us.
Well, what a beautiful and handsome group, and you all look so eager to share your stories, and thank you for finding your voice while you're here working on Capitol Hill in our offices, and I'm looking forward to hearing your stories and your thoughts about how to improve the foster care system, and thank you all for being leaders and champions. I joined Senator Grassley in those beautiful remarks. I could ditto everything that he said and just add a few other thoughts just briefly, because I know the panel is what everyone came to hear. But I am so proud of the work that CCAI has done now for almost 12 years, hosting with our sponsors this group of foster youth intern. So when we started this program, we thought that we were doing a great favor to them by giving each of them an opportunity to intern in a Senate or Congressman's office, which we soon found out, however, that we were the ones receiving the blessing and the gift, because coming out of their hearts and their minds were so many hopes and dreams, not just for themselves, but for the 400 to 500,000 children that experience foster care during a year in the United States, and for the 25,000 children that age out, much like what Senator Grassley said about being told, you know, this is your last day, leave your belongings here, we'll see you later. I mean, there's just no reason that our country is spending almost $30 billion a year, about half and half, federal and state, to get some of the outcomes that we're getting. So you're going to hear today some great ideas about changing and transforming our foster care system. My personal hope for all of you, you'll continue to be the great leaders that you are today in helping us fashion a more compassionate, humane, and more child-centered, person-focused system than we have, that can do a better job for the United States and be a better model for the world. So thank you all so much. I'm so thrilled with the program this year. WELO was terrific and just kept us hopping in many more ways than you will know in our office. So thank you all so much, and really, really appreciate it. And we'll stay for a short time. I've got to chair a hearing at 2:30, but I'm going to stay for a short time. Becky?
All right, and now we'd like to hear from a colleague from the other house, Chairman Dave Camp from the state of Michigan, and we have 2 Michiganders in our crew this year. So,
thank you very much. Well, thank you, and as Senator Landrieu said, I agree with everything Senator Grassley said as well. But I just want to say that I remember when Senator Landrieu and I were working on CCAI, and we were working on establishing this internship program, and to see how it's grown and to see how many students and younger people that it's helped is really gratifying for us, but really looking forward to hearing from all of you. And I want to thank you and congratulate you on your work this summer and your participation in this program, and also on the presentations. And Tony was very helpful to Ways and Means Committee, because we actually worked on a bill that passed the House that Tony was involved in. And it takes a lot of people to get legislation moving around here. And on July 23rd, the House passed, with really unanimous support, a foster care and adoption reform bill that really will help certainly prevent sex trafficking of kids in foster care, which is a growing and critical problem, and obviously help children in foster care return home, but return home safely when possible, and also make sure that they can lead lives like other students, whether that's participating in extracurricular activities or sports or whatever, and require that states provide kids who are aging out of foster care a driver's license, because as we found, if you don't have a driver's license, particularly in my part of Michigan, it's really hard to participate in either work or study or other things, activities at school. And obviously encouraging adoption. That's been something that I've worked on, Senator Landrieu and I've worked on for a very long time. So it's just really great to be here and to see all of you, and I'll look forward to hearing some of your presentations as well. And really want to just say, the work that CCAI does is really important on policy matters, but I think this might be one of the most important things that the organization does, because all of the members of Congress who may not necessarily understand what foster care is all about, when they get a chance to meet all of you and work with you, and when you work with somebody, you get to know somebody. And when you get to know somebody, you understand more about them. So I just really want to thank CCAI for all their hard work, and all of you for what you've done this summer for all of us. Thank you very much.
thank you, Chairman Camp. And I believe we will have Congressman Reichert joining us shortly. We don't know exactly when he'll be arriving. So I'm going to go ahead and, with no further ado, I'm going to turn over the program to our CCAI 2014 Foster Youth Intern, Sam Leva, and he will get us started. And then when the Congressman arrives, we'll pause for remarks with him.
members of Congress, Congressional staff, friends, family, and child welfare professionals. On behalf of the 2014 CCAI Foster Youth Intern Class, welcome, and thank you for joining us today. We look forward to presenting our report titled Shaping Tomorrow with Today's Minds, Applying Updated Solutions to an Outdated System. All of our reports highlight one central fact, that the foster care system is outdated and demands reform. To begin and to give you a sense of where the child welfare system is today, its outcomes for youth, and its need for systematic change, we will give you a few choice statistics of the adversities that foster youth face. When I offer a figure, my 10 peers will stand up as a visual representation of how these statistics represent the adversities faced by the foster youth population nationally. In 2010, 10%, or 1 in 10 of youth who exited the foster care system aged out of care. 35% of involuntary terminations of parental rights for foster children aged 8 to 17 occur because of severe abuse and neglect. 50% of foster youth will be homeless during at least one point in the first 2 years after they exit care. 70% of youth experience 2 forms of complex trauma before they enter foster care, which includes physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. 80% of foster youth believe that post-secondary education is essential to their career goals and life plans, and hope to earn degrees. But only 3% of foster youth graduate college with a 4-year undergraduate degree. Now, we, the 2014 foster youth interns, will present our recommendations. Thank you.
Chairman Camp, Senator Grassley, Senator Landrieu, and other members of the 113th Congress, friends, family, and the outstanding staff of the Committee on Ways and Means, thank you for being here today. Imagine a baby, born to a mother so hopped up on meth and crack cocaine she didn't know she was pregnant. This baby's lungs not fully developed, born premature and abandoned by his birth parents within the first 12 hours of being alive. Well, guess what? I'm that baby, and I consider myself one of the lucky ones. This is because my first placement in the foster care system was my only placement. My forever family was found for me within the first few days of my life. They say that with love, anything is possible, and to that, I'm a living testament. With the love of my forever family, we detoxed my body. They got me the treatment I needed for my lungs, and their love is what's gotten me through to where I am. Not many children between the ages of 0 and 3 in foster care could say that. Infants and toddlers make up about 27% of the children in foster care, and they deserve the reforms that benefit them as well. These children cannot speak for themselves, and as such, they are moved around place to place with what seems like very little concern to how that will affect them as they grow and develop. Children between the ages of 0 and 3 are in a critically sensitive time in their brain development. Research from Harvard Center on the Developing Child shows us that when infants and toddlers are quickly moved from home to home, and multiple times, they're exposed to adversity, resulting from the lack of a stable relationship with a caregiver, which will lead them to experiencing toxic stress, which is the highest level of stress a human can withstand. Also, these children run the risk of developing reactive attachment disorder. The constant instability will impact what we know to be the architecture of their brain, which can lead to greater problems as the child grows, ranging from learning disabilities to drug use to obesity and promiscuity, all the way to death. To be specific, 40% of children who have their brain development disrupted will die prematurely. The Adoption Safe Families Act of 1997, though revolutionary at the time, is a 17-year-old law that's going to have its weaknesses. Under this law, and many others, there's a lot to be desired in regards to providing stability for youth and care between the ages of 0 and 3. Even though it does have the 15 to 22-month provision and the fast track, which are great, but they're not doing enough. So what is it that I recommend Congress do? First, Congress should require states to report through the Adoption and Foster Care Analysis and Reporting System how many times each child moves cumulatively while in care. And, on average, how many times an age group of children is moved. So this information is not currently available to us. And so how can Congress fix a problem if they don't know one exists? Next, Congress should shorten the timeline of 15 to 22 months, spelled out in ASFA, to 9 months firm, to reflect the brain science so that within the first year in care, a permanency plan can be established for these young ones. And finally, Congress should amend Section 104 of the Adoption and Safe Families Act to allow foster parents who've been the primary caregiver of an infant or a toddler to be party to that child's case, so that they too can advocate for these children in care. I believe if Congress does the things I've proposed, we will begin to see brighter days for these infants and toddlers in care. I'm ready to stand up and speak up for those who can't do it themselves. My question to you is, will you join me?
We're going to pause for one moment. That was perfect timing because Congressman Reichert just joined us as Tony was doing his presentation. So we have another member of the Ways and Means Committee and the Subcommittee on Human Resources who's going to make a few remarks for us. Thank you for joining us.
Man, it's quiet in here. Does that make you guys nervous? Are you awake? Yeah. Okay, good. All right. Hey, Tony, I just caught the end of that. Good job, and thank you all for being here. And I just went through a similar sort of an event back in Washington State where they actually had groups of foster care kids from around the state of Washington present their ideas and thoughts on what we could do as legislators from not only the federal level but also at the state level. And I was able to tell them that the good news is there is a piece of legislation that's connected with human trafficking and foster kids that really provides a lot of what I heard the kids in Washington State say, and that is we need to be able to be treated like kids, behave like kids, participate in activities like kids, right? And have that opportunity to have a family to call your own, to have somebody love you and care for you. That's it's language that's easy to put into a bill, but it's really hard to put into action, isn't it? And all of you in this room know that probably better than I do. But real quick, I'm the chairman of the Human Resources Subcommittee and proud to be a part of Mr. Camp's Ways and Means Committee. My previous life, some of you may know, don't everybody leave the building when I mention this, please, but I used to be the sheriff in Seattle. I was a law enforcement officer for 33 years. And I also, in my career, so I was a runaway from my home, my oldest of 7 kids. Domestic violence pushed me out into the street, and I lived in an old Mercury that I was able to buy for $100. I had a part-time job. And when I became a police officer, I worked with kids who ran away from home, right? Naturally. And we tried to get them into homes, to foster care and group homes and the youth center. And I understood the reason why a lot of these kids were leaving home. Some worse conditions than mine, much, much worse conditions than mine. They're looking for someone to care for them. And later in my career, I ended up working a case that some of you might know as the Green River serial murder case. I was the lead detective in that case, and when I became the sheriff, we were able to solve that case. So after 19 years of looking for a monster who says he killed between 60 and 70 girls, 60 and 70. He pled guilty to 49 murders. We closed 51 cases over 19 years. DNA broke the case. But in the process of working that case, I grew to know so many kids in the foster care world. And then just in running away and never being reported and going back to their families and leaving and coming back and leaving, get caught up in the criminal justice system is not where our kids need to be. We've got to help them find homes, loving families, so they can have a childhood, so they can grow up and have hope in the future, so they can have a family that they can identify as their own, that you can celebrate Christmas with and Thanksgiving and Easter and whatever other holiday you want to, just to come home on the weekend and have a family that can wrap their arms around you. And that's what we recognize here in Congress. It's taken a while, I think, for people to wake up, and There are members here, though, that have been working on this issue here at the federal level for a long, long time. And I wondered when I was a detective and when I was investigating those crimes and was actually at the crime scenes and recovering those bodies year after year, day after day, sometimes 6 and 7 in a week, I wondered if anybody cared. And I'm sure all of you were wondering that who are old enough to. And I think the kids and the families back then were wondering, does anybody really care? Do they know about us? Well, we know about you now, and we care about you now, and we love you. And we're going to work hard to make sure that some of the recommendations, all the recommendations, we're going to listen to them, and hopefully we can get that into legislation. And soon today, the Senate, I hope, will pass our bill out of the Ways and Means Committee that Dave Camp has been a champion of for so many years, and I was fortunate enough to move forward with Dave's help. So thank you all for allowing me to have a few minutes to speak to you, and God bless you all, and thank you for taking the time to be here and sharing your ideas, and thank you all for listening. Have a good day. Thanks.
Will today be the day? This was a question I asked myself for 10 years as I sat in the cold and dark basement as a little girl trapped without food, water, or light. Hours. Knocking loudly to escape, hoping that someone would hear. Will I ever eat? Will I survive? Will I ever see the light? Forgotten. As I tried to escape this pain that my aching stomach felt, sleeping seemed to be the only remedy. Starved. My mother abandoned me at birth. By the time I entered the foster care system, I moved around 5 times. I was taken in by a caregiver, and during that time, I experienced sexual abuse, emotional abuse, and physical violence. This neglect and abuse I experienced led me to question whether I was a worthy human being, and if so, why was I ever created? My story isn't so unique. Thousands of foster children face these type of traumatic experiences each day, but the uniqueness of my story is I survived. Members of Congress, over 70% of children who enter the foster care system experience at least 2 forms of complex trauma. And these experiences are found to have the power of decreasing a person's lifespan by as many as 20 years. 20 years. On top of this, studies have also shown that former foster youth experience post-traumatic stress disorder at a much higher rate than the normal population, which is also more than twice that of a US war veteran. Unfortunately, these traumas often worsen when the child enters the home because caregivers are not properly informed or trained about the trauma their foster children have experienced. Sadly, I entered into care already vulnerable. My foster mother noticed that I was malnourished, but continued to do more harm. She chain locked the fridge to prevent me from eating as if I was an animal. Re-triggered. As a result, at the age of 20, I was diagnosed with PTSD, major depression, and panic anxiety. If Congress intervenes, many foster children might not be on several mental health medications, and their likelihood of traumatic experiences would decrease. Thankfully, studies show that if positive relationships are formed for a foster child, the biological effects of trauma on the brain can be reversed. Right now, there are no federal standards requiring states to train foster parents on trauma-informed care elements after they become licensed, even though states receive training funding through Title IV-B, Title IV-E, and the Chafee Foster Care Independence Program. Without trauma-informed training for caregivers, this toxic cycle will continue. With all that has been said, I would like to ask members of Congress to begin requiring states that receive federal caretaker training funds to build the core elements of trauma-informed care into their trainings for caregivers. In turn, states would have the autonomy to choose the model that best serves their population. Secondly, I ask that you also amend the Foster Care Independence Act of 1999 to include standardized ongoing trauma-informed training for caregivers. Just as there are stages of grief, there are also stages of trauma that a child goes through. Amending this law would not only ensure that caretakers are not re-traumatizing the child, but it would also reduce the $124 billion that the government spends as a result of child maltreatment. I say here today as an example of great resilience and strength, not because of my foster care experience, but in spite of it. Many children aren't so fortunate. On behalf of the nearly 400,000 children in foster care today, and the countless numbers who will come after them, I ask that you work with me to create and pass legislation that will ensure the safety and well-being of some of our most important and vulnerable citizens. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Wilonja Muyoma. I was born in Democratic Republic of Congo. Nearly 5 years ago, I moved to United States from a Kenyan refugee camp. My foster parents, Chad and Malenda Anderson, met me at airport when I arrived, and have become my wonderful parents since then. All young people in care dream about transitioning to independence. Despite the fear that comes from this transitioning to this part of their life, they want a safe home they can call their own. However, this dream can only become possible if foster youth have the reliable source of income, which they can get through employment. Unfortunately, if you were to divide this room into two groups, Group 1 representing 17-year-old general population, and Group 2 representing 17-year-old foster youth. In 5 years, 72 people out of 100 in Group 1 will be employed, compared to only 48 in second group. 3 years ago, I was chosen to intern at Microsoft, an opportunity that came at the right time. I was a senior in high school and trying to figure out my next step. I went on and met some of the most achieved 19-year-old at the time at Microsoft. Their accomplishment inspired me to raise my own personal goal. And before the internship ended, I received a full ride to college, and so I chose to pursue higher education. Along the way, there were people who passed this opportunity to me. There were people who wrote those letters of recommendation. And most importantly, there were people who were willing to share their skills with me. This is what I wish for every kid who lives in care. I wish that they will have those people, those networks that can do this to them. This is why I recommend Congress to require states to use CHEFI fund to develop business, to form partnership with businesses and develop internship for foster youth. Eligibility for this program should be set at age 14. Finally, Congress should reauthorize and amend the workforce tax credits to set foster youth as a new target group. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you for everyone for taking time out of your busy day to listen to us, and special thanks to the staffers from Senator Blunt's office for coming. Being a biological relative does not always entitle someone to play a role in your life. I believe that love is thicker than blood. My foster and adoptive families, initially strangers, gave me far more than I could have ever asked for. My biological mother gave me life, but in reality, that is all she gave me. My brother and I were taken into protective custody due to severe abuse and neglect. I was about 1.5 years old at the time, and my brother was about 8. Although he was very young, he made it clear to social workers and the police that he did not want us to have future contact with our birth parents. His wishes were respected, and the traumatic visitations with our birth parents ceased. We spent about 5 years with our foster family, and then we were adopted after our parents' rights were involuntarily terminated. For 17 years, we had no contact with our biological family. Until I was a sophomore in college, I had no idea what my birth parents' names were or what they looked like. My adoptive dad and my brother did a phenomenal job of protecting my identity and privacy. That changed when I listed my birthday on Facebook. Soon after, I received a message from a half-brother who I never knew existed, and then a friend request from my birth mother. Her post and pictures seemed obsessive. She even printed my public profile picture, enlarged it, and then posted multiple photographs of herself beside it on Facebook. I felt a mix of emotions. Honestly, it was super creepy. Never before had my past so stealthily crept into my present. After we were adopted, my brother and I never had an opportunity to choose if we wanted to have future contact with our birth parents. All youth deserve this basic right, especially regarding contact with former abusers. The reason for almost 35% of termination of parental rights cases for youth ages 8 to 17 is because of the severity of abuse or neglect by the parent. State laws do not adequately protect youth from the trauma and safety concerns that may stem from unwanted or unexpected contact with the biological parents, especially in cases where the parental rights were involuntarily terminated. Youth deserve the right to voice their opinion. They deserve the chance to be heard. The Adoption and Safe Families Act of 1997 sets the parameters for when states must begin the process of terminating parental rights and freeing a child for adoption. The act also requires that permanency hearings be held no more than 12 months after the child enters foster care. I recommend that Congress make an amendment to the Adoption and Safe Families Act that would provide an opportunity for youth to document their wishes regarding future contact during the involuntary termination of parental rights hearing. Their opinions should be both written for the court record and included in their permanency plan. It should be made clear that information shared via social media is included in the definition of contact, along with more traditional forms of contact communication, such as letter writing, phone calls, and in-person visitation. If youth desire to have contact and it is in their best interest, then the court should help facilitate it. If, like with my brother and me, future contact would be detrimental, then youth should be protected from enduring further trauma. I hope you will take these suggestions for change into consideration. Thank you very much for your time.
In March, I was notified that my credit score had suddenly dropped 104 points. I am currently classified as having poor credit and at no fault of my own. After checking my credit report, I realized my identity was used by my birth mother for an energy utility account 5 years ago, and the account had just recently gone into collections. I cannot get a credit card, lease a car, apply for decent off-campus housing, or even get a Macy's department store card. Upon receiving my bachelor's degree in May of 2015, I plan to go to law school. Student loans will be hard enough to come by without a cosigner, let alone with poor credit. There's nothing more disappointing than getting accepted into a great law program, only to not be able to attend due to my inability to obtain a loan. As unfortunate as this may seem, my story is far from the worst of what can happen when a foster youth's identity is stolen. There have been reports of foster youth aging out of care at the age of 18 with up to $725,000 in debt due to credit fraud. After realizing this has become an issue, the Child and Family Services Improvement and Innovation Act of 2011 was passed in hopes of responding to credit fraud amongst foster youth. According to the act, each youth upon their 16th birthday will receive a copy of their credit report and sensitive documentation, including birth certificates and Social Security cards. Although a great step in the right direction, the act is only recovering credit after it has been stolen instead of preventing it from happening in the first place. The act itself perpetuates the need for recovery programs, as it is only checking credit reports after the youth has turned 16 years of age. Before then, anyone could use the youth's identity and no one would know because no one is checking for it. This is something that affects everyone. If a youth is unable to obtain housing, a car, loans, etc., due to credit inflicted upon them by someone else, they are likely to end up homeless, in jail, or on welfare, costing taxpayers $20,610 per year per child. Instead, Congress should employ measures to prevent this from happening. First, I propose that Congress begin mandatory credit checks when the youth enters care. Secondly, if foster youth enter the system with a credit history, then a freeze should immediately be placed on their account and the necessary resources shall be used to clear their credit. Lastly, if youth do not have a credit history upon the entry to the foster care system, then a caseworker should contact the 3 major credit bureaus and notify them that the child associated with that Social Security number is a minor and cannot legally obtain a credit account. By amending the Child and Family Services Improvement and Innovation Act of 2011, the need for prevention programs could be reduced and fraud can be caught earlier. With these recommendations, fraud amongst foster youth can be prevented. Thank you.
250,000 children enter the foster care system each year. In 2005, I was one of them. My name is Kelly Henderson, and I spent the majority of my childhood in a home full of violence, physical, and sexual abuse. Silence and secrecy had become the norm for me. Afraid of my own family and to go to bed at night, I felt scared and alone. My father left the family when I was 10, but I was grateful because that meant one less person to abuse me. After telling my secret to a close neighbor, my sister's little brother and I entered the foster care system. My entry into the system at the age of 14 was overshadowed by fears of what was to come. Lost and confused, not knowing what was happening or where I was going scared me. In addition to this, I feared the system because my brother, a perpetrator, told me that the foster care system abused children much worse than anything I had experienced from him. In my new foster family, I felt cared for, but hardly ever knew what to expect or what would happen next. My story of entering the foster care system is not an unusual one, rather the standard for most. One study found that nearly every child was confused about one or both of the following: the reasons for being in care and what would happen in the future. Congress has committed and focused a lot of their attention to youth transitioning out of the foster care system. While this is a much-needed element, guidance beginning at entry into the system is at least equally as important. This is the point at which appropriate support and information are often most critical for these children. Particularly in victims of trauma, re-traumatization should be avoided at all costs. These challenges hinder children's ability to cope, move forward, and adapt to the foster care life. With that, I'm proposing legislation where we can create a comfort and informed approach with the children entering the foster care system and transitioning into new families. Congress should require each state to develop a comfort and informed curriculum for children that explains the foster care system, the rights of foster children, and the roles various professionals play. This curriculum must have 3 requirements. It must be trauma-informed, child-focused, and age-appropriate. In addition, Congress should require each state to train individuals to explain this approach to the children entering care. Finally, to ensure accountability, the comfort and informed curriculum must be provided before the child's first court hearing. Having the opportunity to spend my summer on Capitol Hill and with CCAI, learning more about legislation has truly been a blessing. This opportunity has given me a better understanding of how the system that helped me so much works and how we can even make it better. Given my background, I feel lucky and privileged to be where I am today. In May of this year, I received my master's degree in social work from the University of Kansas. I have worked to position myself so that others can learn from my experiences and help children and youth understand that their life will get better. There should be nothing unknown to them now, and nothing more to fear. When working with foster youth, it is important to keep in mind that sometimes the evil we know is better than the evil we don't. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you all for your sincere interest in these issues, and I'd like to give a special thanks to the Senate Finance Committee majority staff for supporting me and my fellow interns. My story exemplifies in many ways how the foster care system should work. While my mom loved us dearly, her battle with bipolar disorder made it hard for her to provide us with a stable life. I entered foster care when I was 12 and exited at age 15 through a kinship placement with my aunt, who was able to provide my siblings and I with a more balanced and secure upbringing. I was one of the lucky ones. Throughout my 3 years in the child welfare system, I was never placed in a stranger's home. Although I left care before 18, I still qualified for transitional living services that provided me with financial aid assistance for school and living expenses through the Tennessee Department of Children's Services and the Youth Villages Transitional Living Program. Having the strong support of both agencies helped me achieve success academically and professionally. In fact, it was through their recommendations that I was able to land a job as a peer advocate for aging out foster youth, a position developed and funded through the Court Improvement Program. I was required to undergo trainings that taught me, along with attorneys, judges, and other legal personnel, how to read and understand youth permanency, treatment, and transitional plans. While participating in these trainings, it dawned on me how greatly I and the youth I would eventually work with would have benefited from access to such trainings during our own foster care experience. My role as a peer advocate was to ensure that youth were satisfied with their current placements and counsel youth about their upcoming transition out of care. As I listened to them, I noticed a recurrent theme of confusion surrounding their permanency and treatment plans and many of the youth expressed a complete disinterest in their transitional plans. A core requirement of my role was to inform youth about the new law in Tennessee that extended care until age 21 and to get them to accept the extended services. But my request was often met with refusal, as many of the youth shared with me how powerless being a foster youth made them feel, and that their input did not matter to child welfare professionals involved in their case. The youth preferred the freedom that turning 18 would give them from the system that regulated every aspect of their lives, despite the benefits that transitional living services provide. Many of us here know about the negative outcomes associated with this population: higher chances of academic failure, homelessness, incarceration, and unemployment. Therefore, the low acceptance rate of extension of foster care is problematic. For instance, in 2013, only 39% of the eligible aged-out population accepted extension of foster care services in my home state of Tennessee. I believe the powerlessness these older youth often feel will be combated if they were given the opportunity to engage in specialized trainings that teach them how to comprehend and develop their own permanency, treatment, and transition plans. This is essential in including youth more in their process and ultimately placing the power back in their hands. Youth will then more likely choose to stay in foster care beyond the age of 18 and access transitional living services that are vital in helping to stabilize their lives and ensure a successful adulthood. To do this, Congress should amend the Court Improvement Program to clearly specify that trainings funded for courts used for legal professionals and child welfare advocates include current foster youth aged 14 or above. These trainings will have a powerful impact beyond just extension of care. They will serve as an intervention method that could not only increase the amount of youth who accept transitional living services, but could help to create more empowered, engaged, and prepared youth who are enabled to work with child welfare professionals in a collaborative fashion and transition into adulthood with the maximum amount of support available to them. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Being that foster youth are a large yet defenseless population in this country, it is imperative that there's a voice advocating for their rights, welfare, and well-being. I am sitting here today as a former foster youth that has faced adversity and rose above it. Unfortunately, my story is not the case for most foster youth in and out of care. I personally still have siblings in the foster care system, and they are facing the everyday challenges associated with that lifestyle. My sister has been in foster care and group homes since she was 6 years old, and she is now 16. She will stay in the system until she's 21, making her time in placement a total of 17 years. For 10 years now, she has been exclusively taught in special education classroom settings because of her mental, behavioral, and emotional issues. While writing this report, I interviewed her to get a detailed look into the special education system, and she said, "I don't know why I'm in special ed. I'm smart too." My sister's not in the special education system because she has a learning disability, but rather because she has emotional disturbances and behavioral issues that hinder her from entering general education classroom settings. Research shows that foster youth are around 3 times more likely to enter special education. The reasons for the dramatic entries are not widely known, but it is highly speculated that foster children enter special education due to emotional and behavioral disturbances and mental illness such as post-traumatic stress disorder. Throughout my research, I could not find much data on how special education classes address the above-mentioned needs of the children. While there are individualized education programs in place for the children that are placed in special ed, upon looking at the content of what constitutes the IEP goals, there was no mention of addressing the behavioral, emotional, and mental health needs of the children in the classrooms. From the outside looking in, it seems as the education system's preferred remedy to helping these youth is to place them into special education rather than finding a way to address and meet the needs of the foster youth with mental, behavioral, and emotional issues. I personally believe it is our moral and ethical duty to address these critical developmental needs in order to ensure a child's right to a stable life. Therefore, I recommend that Congress first require that advocates for foster children be trained to help screen and refer foster youth with mental health and behavioral needs. Second, amend the individualized education programs to include ways to address and help with mental health, emotional, and behavior needs of foster children. And third, mandate biannual assessments of IEPs to prevent foster youth from ending up in unnecessary long-term special education due to emotional and/or behavioral issues. With my suggested recommendations becoming law, we, as a nation, can assist in establishing better outcomes for foster youth in regards to education and mental health. All children deserve the right to a quality education, and in return, the future of our nation will be in qualified hands. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Constant abuse warped my entire sense of reality for a very, very, very long time. Following the death of my incredible mother, community members repeatedly reported that my life was in danger due to the constant violent cast of characters in and out of my father's home. I told the police officers and child welfare workers who repeatedly investigated the goings-on in my home that everything was fine, that I was fine, that I'd never been forced into anything against my will. Part of my lies were inspired by fear as I was interrogated at the kitchen table while my father stood in the doorway. The other part of my lies came from total and complete lack of certainty about what had actually been going on in my home. This was because my father had repeatedly told me that I was a bad person, that I was a liar, and that I was a sick and perverted human being. When I finally entered the foster care system, when I'd finally been forced to admit that some things happening in my home were not normal and were not okay, my social worker was delighted that I was not a bad kid, that I loved school and I was involved in lots of extracurricular activities. Because of this, I never saw a therapist in my 10 years and 11 placements in the foster care system. I never felt comfortable enough to tell anyone the truth about my childhood until I was 22 years old. Personally, I like to think that I turned out great. But as I have grown and analyzed my life thus far, I can't help but wonder why no one ever intervened when I was at a young age to help me process all of the trauma that I'd experienced. Although mental health services are generally available to youth in care through Medicaid, youth are not being screened and then assessed in a timely manner for their mental health needs, and are then not accessing appropriate evidence-based therapeutic services. Under the Fostering Connections and Increasing Adoptions Act of 2008, states are required to provide initial and follow-up healthcare screenings for youth entering foster care. However, there is no consistency among states for timeframes for mental health screening. This allows many youth, such as myself, to fall through the cracks. Because all foster youth are eligible for Medicaid, they benefit from a service called Early and Periodic Screening, Diagnostic, and Treatment, which includes mental health services. However, as mentioned, federal law does not outline when this screening has to take place. The variance in timeframes among states is enormous. For example, Oklahoma requires a behavioral health screening within 90 days of entry into foster care. Illinois requires the screening to occur within 1 day. South Dakota reports not requiring a time frame, and Pennsylvania does not require a formal behavioral health screening at all. In addition to the screening problem, research shows that not all appropriate mental health services needed by children and youth in foster care are covered by Medicaid. These inconsistencies could and should be remedied because my research has shown that I'm not an anomaly in terms of not accessing screening and then appropriate mental health services. However, I am an anomaly in terms of that I will graduate from college, I will not experience homelessness, and I don't have a substance abuse problem. The federal government has the ability to set standards to amend legislation to ensure that youth receive services that they are supposed to be guaranteed under federal law. The federal government has the ability to set standards to amend legislation to ensure that youth receive services that they are guaranteed. I recommend that Congress amends the Fostering Connections to Success and Increasing Adoptions Act of 2008 to specify that screenings for physical, mental, and oral health must occur within 30 days of entry to the foster care system, and that the act should also include requirements for comprehensive assessments for physical, mental, and oral health within 60 days. Thank you all for being here today, and special thank you to everyone from Senator Casey's office who came out.
For most people, living with your biological family when unfortunate circumstances prevent you from living with your parents is better than a life with strangers. However, it was not for me. I was placed in foster care just 1 day old when my mother and I both tested positive for drugs. At age 7, it was determined that the best decision for me was to remain in the care of my aunt. Saving me from a possible life on the streets due to my mother's drug addiction, I thought I was safe. I thought foster care had saved me. I was wrong. My maternal aunt was an alcoholic. Throughout my life with her, I experienced every form of abuse, poverty, and neglect. At 18, I aged out of the foster care system, and my aunt's health took a turn for the worse. On my own, it was now time to find a job, a place to stay, attempt to live a normal adult life. However, I was prepared for this next step. Perfect school attendance for 12 years, honors classes, and acceptance letters to college. It wasn't until I emancipated from the foster care system and was in the process of completing the FAFSA form that I realized I did not only not have access to my birth certificate, I was never issued one. Because my mother gave birth to me in a Los Angeles crack house and later abandoned me at the hospital, due to the child welfare system's carelessness, my birth was never officially recorded. From that day on, I was known as baby girl, and my birth date went unknown. I was escaping the system for years that had silenced, broken, and abused me. However, I was now entering the world unprepared, scared, and traumatized. I was now homeless. I was now facing the odds that are all too common among transitioning youth. Breaking my silence and realizing that my past can help ensure no one experiences the things I have is what shaped my policy recommendations. To promote accountability and transparency in our foster care system, I believe Congress should amend the Preventing Sex Trafficking and Strengthening Families Act to allow youth of all ages, as well as youth placed in guardianship and kinship care, access to their essential documents. Second, require states to create an electronic database system to store information about foster youth and their necessary documents upon entering and exiting the foster care system. Without a home and proper documentation to excel through life, I was robbed of my ideals, gave up hope, and struggled to find a reason to live. It was only because I received necessary documents like a birth certificate and a Social Security card that I'm now a proud senior at Howard University. Research has shown it is often missing documents that cause children in care to experience over-immunization, misdiagnosis, becomes victims of sex trafficking, and repeat grades in courses. However, most children in care are not resilient as I. They may get discouraged in the difficult process of waiting for documents and then ultimately needing a place to safeguard records. I urge everyone here today to reach out to the vulnerable members of the foster care population and come together to create a brighter future for everyone by giving children in care access to their essential documents.
It is estimated that by 2016, there will be 20,000 children in the U.S. foster care system due to immigration enforcement. A total of 4.5 million U.S. citizen children, or 7% of the nation's children, have at least one undocumented parent. These youth are all potential victims of the intersection of immigration enforcement and the child welfare system, where many separated families face nearly insurmountable obstacles to their reunification. Both immigration enforcement and the child welfare system are often said to be broken and in need of reform. But what happens when these two broken systems meet? The current structure is setting records in the families that it is tearing apart, something that can be amended if the U.S. institutes and meaningfully enforces protections for these youth and their parents. I am a son of immigrants who escaped violence in El Salvador around the time of the Civil War. Although I did not enter care due to immigration enforcement, as a former foster youth, I can understand the trauma and difficulties these children must face. Looking at current immigration policy and its enforcement, a fact remains blaringly clear. Children are all too often the unintended and unseen victims due to the fact that these systems are not working in coordination in their respective parent attainment and child dependency processes. The fact alone that most of these children have parents should be an important reminder that they should not be in the foster care system in the first place. We must ensure that children are not unnecessarily placed into foster care for prolonged periods of time as a result of their parents' detainment and the undue termination of parental rights. To do this, I recommend that Congress do two things. First, Congress should work to draft federal guidelines and protocols to ensure that parents receive procedural protections at the time of apprehension and through detainment before the termination of parental rights and the severance of the parent-child relationship. And second, Congress should require training for immigration enforcement personnel and child welfare workers involved in these processes and best practice standards and the obstacles to reunification that detained parents and their children face. These protections should include several things, such as the determination of whether a detainee is a parent or primary caregiver at the time of apprehension, adequate time for parents to make arrangements for their children's care, parent-child visitation rights, the right for a parent to participate in family court proceedings involving their children, whether in person or by phone, and the right for a child to return to their parent's nation of origin after deportation if they are deemed fit. This training would allow ICE agents and DCF staff to adhere to these protocols and ensure that the enforcement of the nation's immigration policies does not unnecessarily hurt families. It is imperative to return the focus of these two systems to reunification rather than removal. Working to do this would not require significant revisions to either immigration enforcement or child welfare policy. These actions would not fix the intersection of these two systems, but they would be an important and a necessary first step in making sure that these children are being accounted for and that these children and their right to a family are protected. Thank you. Despite the negative statistics offered before and the adversities that youth face detailed in our report, 100% of foster youth can benefit from all the recommendations you've heard, and given the right resources and support, can become productive and successful members of society. We represent the 100%. This is it for our policy recommendations. Thank you for joining us. On behalf of the interns, thank you to our congressional offices for hosting us this summer. And thank you to CCAI and the Sarah Start Fund for welcoming us and supporting us along the way. We appreciate everything you've done for us and for foster youth nationwide. At this point, we're going to turn it to question and answer for the interns. Please raise your hand so we can get you microphones at either sides of the room and answer your questions. Any questions? Back there.
Hey guys. I'm just curious to ask, so now that all this hard work is done and you all presented your policy reports and the stress is over, how does it feel?
Anyone?
Bittersweet.
I can
Absolutely
sleep
wonderful.
now.
I get to go back to California and get an In-N-Out burger. That's what I'm doing.
I have a question for Emily. You'd mentioned you were discussing at length the EPSDT screening system. I was wondering if you ever did actually get screened, and if you had, what that experience was like, whether you thought it was a thorough exam or not.
So I originally set out to do my report about mental health screenings, which is what the majority of my research was in, because I was subjectively kind of screened out by my social worker as being okay because I was so involved in school. She was like, "You're great, you don't need anything, you don't need additional support." I was screened for, because I was behind on my vaccinations and what have you. Yeah.
Feel free to just raise your hands and we'll get microphones too. Right here.
Hi, I'm Price Grisham. I'm a student mentor from Gordon College. I've worked with students for many years. I trained to be a college chaplain. It's a lot more fun to be a mentor. And I would like to hear personally what each of you have in mind for future plans and how what you've done here today is going to affect what you do in the future.
We'll just go down the line. I have about 1.5 years of school left, so I'll be graduating probably in December of 2015 from college, where I plan to then go to law school. And before coming to this program, I've always kind of wanted to practice family law. And if anything, this has made me want to do it even more so I can keep together families and really help to keep them together. And if they're not unified, reunify all those families.
Hello. I just recently graduated with my social work and sociology degree, and something I'm gonna soon do is go to California and do a fellowship program working with families and youth on community development. But for the further future, I hope to return to DC maybe and pursue advocacy in some way. But I would also like to pursue my social work degree at a master's level form and hopefully go on to do something great.
Hi, I am a rising junior, and I'm studying economics and computer science. After this program, I'm planning either to join the Navy as a candidate school, officer candidate school, or go into software development because that's what I'm studying.
So I graduated in December of this year, and I'm still kind of searching for the right path. But this summer has deepened my interest in public policy and advocacy. So I hope to stay around DC and see what opportunities present themselves.
Well, I'll be going back to Ferris State University, go Bulldogs, my senior year. And upon graduating, I plan to go to law school. And this summer has really just shown me that it is possible, especially since I've seen so many foster youth who have gone to law school, and so many of our supervisors and different things on the Hill and at CCAI and through Sarah Start Fund who are lawyers. And it's just inspirational to see that other people from, not the best of circumstances have also gone to law school and pursued that dream.
Hi, as mentioned, I just received my master's in social work. Coming out here this summer has given me the opportunity to learn more about legislation, and I have strong interest in public policy. So I do see myself getting a PhD or going to law school. But I do see myself working in a clinical setting or in a school as well. So I'm still figuring it out.
Well, this past May, I just graduated from the University of Memphis with a double major in anthropology and African American studies. So after being here in DC this summer, I decided that I'm going to move here. I don't have a job yet, but working on that. I want to work on the Hill, actually. Being here has really piqued my interest in politics and policy. And the ultimate goal is to stay here for a couple of years and learn and develop skills, a strong skill set to take it back to Memphis and help the community that I'm from and just help rebuild the city that I love. So that's my plan.
I'm a very abstract person, so I want to do it all. But since this is real life, I will be graduating with my bachelor's in communication studies with a minor in Africana Studies from Cal State Long Beach. And I told everybody that I'll be moving back to DC in January. I don't think I want to work on the Hill after being here, but it was a wonderful experience. I'm telling, it was great. I've learned so many skills and everything. I would love to work with people from the Hill. And eventually, I'm really big in music. I intern at Warner Brothers. I am hoping to do some stuff with them. I kind of want to see, and this is where my abstractness comes, but see how we can get the music industry involved with politics to I won't get too deep, but I just want to merge the two some way, somehow. I believe in myself. I believe in my peers. And eventually, my goal is to help my community, Black people, women, and foster youth. So at the end of the day, when I die, those are the three groups of people who I really want to help. That's it.
I will also graduate in December, so I have to go do that right now. Very important. And following that, I have a list of 42 things that I'm really excited about that are ranked in order that I'm excited about. So I'm applying to all of those things and see where I go.
I will be graduating Howard in May 2015. This summer has done two things for me. I kind of have a plan now. I'm going to apply for my master's in social work after I graduate. And I also am really empowered. I published writing. So I want to be an advocate. I want to do more of the groundwork. We have these wonderful policies that are all set in place, but foster youth are not aware of them or they don't have proper access to them. So I want to be that support and that advocate for this population.
And I still have 2 more years of undergrad left. I've really enjoyed my office this summer, Senator Blumenthal's office. So I'm considering coming back to the Hill. But I'd also like to go to law school and eventually become interested in something in public interest, either in immigration or child welfare.
I have a question for Kalia about the role that the state agencies play in protecting foster youth's personal information and how much you looked into that. My experience with the foster agencies is they're not particularly concerned about people's privacy and ensuring that things like social security numbers and those things are kept private. And I was just wondering if you had looked into that and had any recommendations on that.
This is on? Okay. Actually, yes, I have. Each state, as everyone knows, is different. However, in states like California, they're a little more advanced and they're doing a little more about the issue. But up until recently, no one knew it was an issue until kids began aging out with this tremendous amount of debt. Currently, there's a lot of recovery programs, whereas if you do have debt when you age out, then they'll use their resources and different programs and try to get your credit replenished. However, it does a lot of detrimental, it just does a lot of harm to your credit score. So it does take a long time after you age out. But no, states aren't really, I don't want to say they aren't doing anything. They're more of just recovering it after it's already done, whereas they should be preventing it from happening in the first place, because youth that's only 18 years old should not have a credit history of any sort.
Hi, everyone. My name's Devin Champa, and I work for CASA for Children here in D.C. And I was wondering if any of you had a CASA, a court-appointed special advocate, or a mentor, and if any of that was a positive or negative experience.
Oh. I had a CASA in California, and we're still super close today. And I think the CASA program is 100% beneficial if you have a really dope CASA. So she came to my graduation. She took me to the airport to move to LA for school. She helped me with prom and all this good stuff. So I see her more as a mentor than a CASA, but CASA is a great program.
Anyone else?
I had one as well. I also had a CASA worker. She was really incredible. We're not still close because she moved to Taiwan, but she was wonderful for when she was in my life.
Hi, I'm with the National Center for Housing and Child Welfare, so I'm actually going to shock myself by not asking a housing-related question. But Kalia, I was also intrigued by this identity theft issue, and I've been hearing about this now for over 15 years about kids that turn 18 and try to establish their own household and find out that they owe PEPCO $8,000. And my question is there any attempt in Congress to get at that from the other side of the equation, to say to PEPCO, you had a 3-year-old Social Security number and you billed them for utilities, so if a kid turns 18 and they owe PEPCO $8,000, could the creditor or the business be stuck with the bill because they didn't do their due diligence?
I think they should look into it. The only issue is the creditors and the credit bureaus, you can't match Social Security numbers to age. So when someone gives a Social Security number, they'll take it at face value that it's that person's Social Security number, especially with everything being digital now. So on their behalf, they don't know. They just file it and go about their day. And then once it goes into collections, then they put it on a credit report, and no one will really know about it because, as you say, if it happens to a 3-year-old, by the time they're 18, it's been in collections for 15 years or more, and after 7 years, some of it is just, deleted off of their account. But if it hasn't been over 7 years, then the issue is brought up when they're finally trying to use their own credit. Hopefully in the future, they will devise some sort of system where kids under 18, foster youth, and just regular, like general population children cannot obtain any credit. Like any credit accounts, I don't know exactly how they plan to go about that. I suggest credit freezes, but hopefully in the future something is done about it, but currently no, nothing is being done.
Right there.
I just want to say how inspired I am by all of you. I've been a foster parent for over 30 years, and a lot of the things you all have talked about are issues that have come across my doorsteps. Amani, do you know if it's been implemented in any state where trauma training is taught to foster parents? Because I think that's really crucial. As much time as the foster parent spends with the children and the caseworkers have such little time with the children, I think it's imperative that foster parents understand that every child that walks through their door is traumatized. Just the separation from their biological families and all of the experiences they might have had in their home. Every person who's caring for that child should understand that that child's gone through a trauma. Do you know if that's part of any program in any states?
Thank you for your question. So what I have found during my research is that there are states that are doing trauma-informed care for foster parents, adoptive parents, and caregivers, kinship parents. So states like Iowa, Washington, D.C., Colorado are some of the few states that are doing trauma-informed care for foster parents and caregivers. Another thing is that the caring for children who've experienced trauma is done by the National Traumatic Stress Network, and it's a trauma-informed curriculum specifically for caregivers who have children that are coming into their homes, using this curriculum to help inform the work that they're doing, not only for the foster children, but to help identify some of the foster parents' own trauma. Because there are times where we have caregivers who come into this type of work and want to kind of heal through their own trauma, but not necessarily know that they have it. And so this curriculum helps identify some of their own trauma while also is just kind of exposing the child's trauma as well. And so that's why I think it's imperative that that states understand and know that there are really good models out there that states are doing. And so they don't have to work from the bottom up, but that they can help collaborate with other states that are doing it well so that they know.
Back there.
I'd just like to ask Kelly if she would expand upon, can everybody hear me? Did you hear me? I'm really loud. Becky Shipp, Senate Finance Committee. Just wondering if Kelly, who did a fantastic job in her office, would expand upon her recommendations for us.
Right. Don't know where to start, but through my research, I've learned that the professionals and organizations have recognized the need for providing information to foster youth. From what I've researched, it's through the court. The information is through the courts rather than the foster care system, and I've found information to where that we can use these examples to. I'm sorry, I'm not. I'm not. I'm gonna pass. Sorry.
Well, her report has plenty of information, so just feel free to just read it. Yeah.
Back here.
Right here.
I'm Libby from Senator Landry's office, and I'm wondering if any of you would ever consider running for office.
Yes.
You're looking at the President of the United States for 2044 right here. This is widely known to everybody, so yes.
No, I'm definitely considering doing it now. But a person that I worked with on the Senate Finance Committee who's sitting here, I would put him on the spot, but I'm not going to do that. After having a talk with him one time about how the changes I want to make for the African American population, he's like, I think you should run for office. And so I'm considering it. Like, I want to work on Capitol Hill for a while and get some experience, and then maybe go back to Memphis and start off on the school board, city council, and then maybe president one day. Sorry, Tony.
Right here.
This question is for Mr. Samuel.
Okay.
What major shifts would you specifically suggest ICE and the courts to implement to create a more transparent and effective protections for foster youth?
Well, I think the most important thing is for these two systems to coordinate together, because often while ICE works to detain immigrants, they're left unaware of the progress of their children's cases because they aren't really uniformly given access to phone calls, either to DCF staff or to make arrangements for their children. So I just think making sure that they have these procedural protections, that they can visit their children, that they can always have phone calls, would just do a lot to make sure that they can reach out to the support they need, both to help their family reunify, whether United States or back to their country of origin. So just making sure that they are working in coordination.
Hi, my name is Wayne Sharp, and I'm the Vice Chairman of the National Council for Adoption. I'm also a retired certified financial planner. And since we all hope all of you find a forever home, unfortunately, and some of you here have been emancipated or aged out. And I'm just interested in how much, if any, type of personal financial training any of you received before aging out.
Anyone?
Hello. Well, I'm kind of obsessed with planning. So I would always contact my caseworker, and we would go through especially after learning about credit reports, we would go through credit reports. We would budget out what I would spend for the week if I got this amount a month. To this day, like in my purse right now, I have a picture of like a house with a mortgage and how much I would pay bi-weekly. Like, I'm just really obsessed with the whole idea of budgeting wisely to have for the future, because everyone's like, you're young, save for a rainy day, and that can be kind of hard when you are young. But for the most part, I think in Michigan especially, like our caseworkers did a pretty well job with talking to us about finances and the things we need to be successful for the future.
Hello. Unfortunately, I aged out so abruptly that I didn't have the financial, knowledge about what to do next. And so there was not anything really set in stone, and so I kind of left clueless. But what I will say is, thankfully, the Sarah Start program did a financial literacy class with us, and I think that was like really, really helpful because it brought us down to the basics. And so though I didn't get it when I aged out of foster care, years later I was able to get it, and so I'm looking forward to being able to have a little more money in my pocket. Oh yeah, and thank you CCAI for that.
Hi, I never done anything formal, like financial related formally when I was in care, but when I went to college, actually joined the investment group at my school. So we invest about $100,000 of school endowment. I learned a lot.
Hi there, Laura Burns from the Senate Finance Committee. We had Dara in our office, and she was wonderful, and she did such a good presentation. So just wanted to thank all of you for doing what you've been doing, because it's such a good perspective for us to get in our offices, and we get such good ideas from these events. So thank you. I just had a question around, in your process of deciding what recommendations you were going to make, how many of you stumbled across things that actually already are supposedly given to you or provided to you or you're supposed to hear about? You realize that you're supposed to get something and you didn't end up getting them. So how many of you found recommendations or thought about recommendations that actually already exist, they're just not happening? Thank you.
Yeah, Dominique.
Yeah, when I was researching, it was at the same time that they were passing HR 4058, which required youth access to the documents. So that was cool because it was at the same time as I was writing my report. Also, from my colleagues, I was finding information about grants and things to go to college, like money to pay for college, that because I didn't have a birth certificate and social security number, that I actually could never have access to, but it was great to see that those things are in place.
I would say, for me, CCAI warned us, before while we were here, is that, we're going to go through a little training of the different child welfare funding and then just be on the lookout that there might be things that we see that we were eligible for. So just be careful. And so I saw a whole bunch of things that I could have been eligible for that I didn't know about. And so there were things that I wish I would have had known, especially applying to college. I applied to a Christian institution, which was also private. And so I didn't realize just the different discrepancies between public and private in terms of how much money you get. And so I think if I would have been more well-informed, I think that I would have, I don't know if I would say I would have made a different decision, but I think that I would have looked into more resources. And so I think that proper training even for social workers need to really be established, because there are so many things out there, booklets. And so there are things that the normal population doesn't know about. So of course, with the foster youth, there are other things that we don't know about either. And so I think it's important to really stress that as you age out, especially with the transition plan of what is available.
Hi, Nicole Dobbins, Voice for Adoption. You all did wonderful. Many of you mentioned trauma or PTSD or EPSDT under Medicaid, and I actually found it very striking that you never received any therapy, Emily, and I know you mentioned it, Amani, as well. Can any of you expand on how therapy has played a role in helping you overcome some of your past experiences of why you entered foster care, or in either while you were in foster care receiving those therapies, or as an adult you're seeking those out?
Well, I actually go to therapy from the time I was 16 up till now, and a lot of it is just like, I'm an adopted child, so I haven't gone through so much as my colleagues here, but I still have the trauma that I've experienced in my own life, being adopted and being a crack baby and what have you. And honestly, therapy is honestly one of the greatest things you have, because it's an hour or two a week, or a day if you need to go that often, where people have to listen to you. I mean, there's so many things you can't talk to with your parents, or you don't feel like it's a good environment to talk to with your family, your friends, but going to therapy, someone's there to listen to you, support you, and help you get to the next step. I definitely wouldn't be the person I would be today with my therapist. Her name was actually Stacy, and we worked together for 3 straight years, working on the same issues. But having someone there who's on your team, rooting for you every step of the way when you're doing something, it speaks wonders. And I think everyone in some sort of way should have some sort of therapy that they do. I think it's beneficial in all aspects of your life.
I would say for me, I went to counseling ever since I was young, but the problem was I didn't know why I was going. And so at the age of 20, like I said, I was diagnosed with those three different things. And so I would say for me, that was one of the best, kind of like a really, really good day for me, because I then understood what was going on with me, whereas before I had no idea. And so I was seeing a psychiatrist, and he was able to really, really just help reshape how I saw myself. And I know sometimes the whole medication thing is kind of scary, but for me it was very beneficial, because he was very, very careful with what he gave me, told me why he gave it to me, and tracked it for the years that I was on it. I'm off now, but during that time it was really, really useful for me. And then being able to continue that throughout college, and then also being able to continue that out here in DC, we've been able to access some support. And so I'd say it's very, very useful, because you just have a different understanding of who you are. But I wish I would have known that when I was younger, when I was going to counseling. I had no idea why I was going. But even through all those years that I was going, there was never any diagnosis until the age of 20. And so I think that also needs to change.
And just to speak a little bit on, everyone's always very surprised when I mentioned that I was never in therapy, especially even when I wanted to do my research project on this. People were like, no, every foster kid has to go to therapy. You were just really weird. But actually, I don't want to misquote my report, but in there, I believe the statistic, it's 3 out of 4 foster youth diagnosed with, I don't remember what the exact wording is, but like some sort of mental issue hadn't received services within 12 months of diagnosis. So it's a lot more common than I feel like is the just general assumption of that because of EPSDT and because Medicaid is guaranteed, everyone assumes that all foster kids are in therapy.
One thing I didn't like about therapy was that the social workers would come get you out of class and take you. And I'm a big advocate for normalcy. So I used to be embarrassed when like this guy or woman in a suit would come up to my school with that sticker on their car and tell like the whole office that, oh, Takija Randolph has to go to therapy. So therapy can be very beneficial, but some kids may reject it deeply in their minds. I know my siblings do, because it makes you feel like a foster kid. And I think everybody up here is a pure advocate for not feeling like a foster child. So if you guys see those cards with the stickers, please tell them to take them off for the kids.
My name is Keith Cirillo. I don't have any ties to any organizations or political ties. I'm just an adult adoptee. Found out I was adopted about 3 years ago.
Any more questions? Yeah, we're here.
Hi, my name is Kristen Krzwanski-Glickman. I had the pleasure of working with Ty this summer. You did a great job. My question is for WELO. So youth unemployment is a huge issue in this country. You highlighted one social enterprise, Year Up, in your report. I know that they target or they allow youth age 18 to, I believe, 24 in their program. And you are advocating for starting an internship program and employment opportunities by age 14. So I just kind of wanted to give you a chance to advocate for that age group. If you could talk about why you chose 14, why it's important to start earlier than 18. Thank you.
Okay, we're closing in on time. We can take one more question.
I'm ready now. I'm ready.
Huh?
Okay.
Sorry for that. Go ahead.
It's okay. So I recommended 14. First, there is 2 reasons. The first reason is that you obviously develop this relationship with people outside of the normal child welfare system where there's like social worker and then there's a lawyer. But when you get an internship, for me, for example, when I got an internship, I went on and met my manager at Microsoft who has been in business for like 30 years. And everything that we talked about is something that I've never received in foster care. So there's that benefit for it. Another benefit is that when you're young, it's like you gain those skills and you just build up those skills. And when you're like 18, when you have to force someone to cram this thing at 18, they have to leave foster care to go find other homes. They have to find employment. So there is a benefits to starting this process way earlier at 14 years old. And it just seemed natural when get at 18, I've been doing this, it's just gonna be a little bit different here, so.
One more back there. Oh. Right in the back. Yeah.
My name's Dan from the Committee on Ways and Means, and I had the privilege of working with Tony this summer. And Tony, you really are an inspiration, so thank you for your time. When you return home, what steps do you plan on taking to advocate for de facto parent status in Michigan's court system?
Well, Michigan State University has a group that actually sought me out. It's called FAME, and that's for foster kids at my school who have been through the foster care experience. And they do a lot of advocacy and outreach for not only just people who go to that school, but in that region of Michigan. And so I really hope to join up with them and lend my voice to their to what they're doing, and really the de facto parent status, which is a key part of my recommendation in my report. Good question, Dan. It was a pleasure to work with you and the committee as well.
So thank you all for coming and for giving us your attention this afternoon. Now I will turn it to CCAI's Interim Executive Director, Becky Wyhan, for some closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us. I just ask that you would indulge me for a moment for a few acknowledgments, because what you see here, this hour and a half or so that you've spent with our interns, is actually a 10-week process, and there are a lot of people that we want to just thank briefly. So first I want to thank our partners, the American Petroleum Institute, Annie E. Casey Foundation, Casey Family Programs, Dave Thomas Foundation for Adoption, Freddie Mac Foundation, and Sarah Start Fund. I'm sure many of those names are not a surprise to folks in the room, but we want to acknowledge their support for this program and the interns this summer. And also, this type of a program and this report that you have in your hands and the briefing that you see today couldn't be done without the amazing work of the CCAI staff. So I just want to acknowledge Allison Coble, Sherry Coombs, Misty McHatton, and Ashley Davenport for their extraordinary work supporting the interns this summer. And I have a special message for our 2014 Foster Youth Internship class. As you all know, and we've expressed to you many times, we are so proud of you. We know that you all have bright futures ahead, and I hope that everyone who is here takes a moment to read and go in depth in their policy recommendations. They just scratched the surface in their 3-minute presentations to you. There's a lot of great information. They did a lot of research on states and innovative ideas, and so they have a lot of great information for you in your reports. We're just so proud of you, and we look forward to all the great reports that we'll hear back from you on the good work that you'll continue to do. And I love that we got to hear, because of that question, about what you're all planning to do in the future. We're so proud of you. Can we just acknowledge them and their great work this summer? To the members of Congress who are a part of the Coalition on Adoption, the 2 foster care caucuses, and special thanks to Senator Landrieu, Senator Grassley, Congressman Camp, and Congressman Reichert for their special remarks today. We just want to encourage them and all the congressional staff and the members of the staff of the administration and agencies and departments who are here today, as well as all of the members of the advocacy community to read the report, and to really, a lot of their work and their voice lays in your hands now. So we just want to encourage you to take this information and run with it. The interns are available for more feedback if you have questions for them afterwards. We're actually going to give you the opportunity to mingle with them, and we'll be transitioning to a reception for those of you who are able to stay. And we just want to thank you all for your time this afternoon, and again, thank the interns for their incredible work this summer. So thank you, and please feel free to celebrate with us at the reception afterwards.